everybody, today's topic is dividing fractions word problems. As a reminder, you do not need to write down everything, but be sure to jot down important information and at least one example of each type of problem that we cover. Remember that you can also pause to jot down important notes, rewind to view information again, and fast forward if you think you got it. Just be careful that you fast forward just enough and not where you miss anything important. Let's get started. How do we set up our division problem when you're given a word problem? Well, you need to remember that the first number, your dividend, is the original number that we will be dividing into groups. The second number, the divisor, tells us how we are dividing the amount. Make sure you pause this video and jot this information down in your notebook before moving on. Okay, so the first number is the original amount that we're dividing into groups. The second number tells us how we are exactly dividing that amount. Let's take a look at an example. In this example, Marcus is picking songs to play during a slideshow. The songs are each 3.5 minutes long. The slideshow is 31.5 minutes long. How many songs will play in the slideshow? So we're not just looking at which number is bigger to figure out the first number. Sometimes the first number, the dividend, is smaller because we could be dividing a fraction into a whole, right? We could be sharing it with a bunch of different people. So you have to be careful. What we do want to pay attention to is what are we dividing into little pieces? Is it the songs that we're dividing into little pieces, or is it the slideshow that we're dividing into little pieces? If you said that it's the slideshow we're dividing into little pieces, you are correct. The slideshow is the entire presentation, and it's going to be divided into different songs that will be playing during the presentation. So your equation should be 31.5 divided by 3.5. The slideshow's duration, 31.5, is going to be divided into many different songs that are 3.5 minutes long. So the equation would be this. And then you would use either the tape diagram or the algorithm method to solve for the answer. So you want to make sure that you're practicing how to set up these problems. Let's take a look at some examples. In this example, Carlos has 4/5 of a tank of fuel in his car, and he uses 1/10 of a tank per day. So you need to figure out how many days will his fuel last. Go ahead and pause the video and try this out on your own first. All right. So I need to first figure out what it is that we're dividing into little parts. That's going to be our dividend, our first number. Is it the tank of fuel in his car that we're dividing into different parts as he drives? Or is it the amount that he drives per day that's going to be split into groups? It should be his tank of fuel that we are dividing into different amounts. We have 4/5 of his tank that is full, and we're going to try and divide it into different days where he uses 1/10 each day. Okay? So your setup should be 4/5 divided by 1/10. We want to know how many of those 1/10 are in there. So for this problem, in order for me to solve it, I do need to make sure that they have the same common denominator. 5 and 10 are not the same common denominator. I could, however, multiply this 5 by 2 in order to get to the common denominator of 10. So then I would end up with 4 times 2 is 8 on top, 5 times 2 is 10 on the bottom. So it becomes 8/10 divided by 1/10. I can draw 8/10 because that's the dividend, that's the number we draw. I'm going to draw 9 lines. So I'm going to shade in 8 of those parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is 8/10. His 4/5 tank is equivalent to 8/10 tank of fuel because we just made equivalent ratios here. 4/5 is the same as 8/10. Now I'm going to divide it into groups of 1/10. So I'm going to circle groups of 1/10. Here's 1/10. Here's another 1/10, 1/10, 1/10, 1/10, 1/10, 1/10, and 1/10. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8/10. 8/10 divided by 1/10 is 8. There's 8 groups of 1/10. I could also solve it with my algorithm method, change that division to multiplication, change the 1/10 to 10/1, and multiply. I can cross-reduce these 10s because they're just repetitive there. 10 divided by 10 is still 1, and I would get 8. So in both ways, I would get 8. Okay? So 2 different ways to solve that problem. You're going to have to set up your equation on your own. Let's try this one. Pause the video and try this one on your own. This one says that Amira has 3/4 of a bag of cat food. Her cat eats 1/10 of a bag per week. How many weeks will the food last? All right, so we're trying to decide what it is that we're dividing into little pieces. That would be your bag of cat food. That's the amount that we need to divide into different smaller pieces for the amount of food that her cat's going to eat per week. So we have 3/4 of the bag divided into 1/10 portions that the cat will eat each week. I could solve it by tape diagram or the algorithm method. For the tape diagram, I will need to make sure that I have common denominators. I need a number that 4 and 10 can both get to. That could be 20. 4 can multiply by 5 to get to 20, and 10 can multiply by 2 to get to 20. So I end up with 15/20 divided by 2/20. So when I draw it, I'm going to draw a tape diagram with 19 lines. So this is 20ths. I'm going to shade in 15 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I'm going to circle groups of 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I got 1 left over. So I have 7 and 1 left over. I needed groups of 2/20. So it's 7.5. I had 1 left over out of the 2 I needed. I could also use my algorithm method. For my algorithm method, I won't need to change this into common denominators. I can just take the 3/4 and then multiply instead of divide by 10/1. So then I would multiply 3 times 10, which is 30, 30 divided by 4. So I still remember with the algorithm method, you will need to do that division. For the tape diagram method, you don't need to do that. You're just counting groups. So it's 30 divided by 4. 4 goes into 30 7 times with 2 left over. 7 2/4. 7 2/4 is not reduced. You need to change it into 7.5 because 2 out of 4 is 1/2. Both ways give you 7.5. So the food will last 7.5 weeks. Okay, so this is a great review on dividing fractions, but the point of this exercise is for you to set up your own equation. And remember, the first number is the amount that you are dividing into little pieces. So you want to read the problem correctly and make sure that you have the order correct, because 3/4 divided by 1/10 is very different than 1/10 divided by 3/4. So the order right here that you set up is very important. Let me know if you have any questions as you work on these problems, If not, I will see you in class.